Sam, you've learned the Chinese language and culture for over 2 decades now. So are there any good tricks in learning the language?
Well, as the saying goes, 工欲相启示，必先利其器. And tools like the Xinhua Dictionary are essential for any Chinese language learner.
Various editions of the Xinhua Dictionary actually can be found here at the China National Archives of Publications and Culture. They are among the exhibits that President Xi Jinping checked out when he visited here back in June. Let's take a look inside.
Great.
The National Archives serves as a seed gene bank of Chinese culture. Following his trip here, President Xi Jinping reiterated a concept that he himself had introduced: the integration of the basic tenets of Marxism with fine traditional Chinese culture, also known as the second integration. This is actually highlighted by Xi's application of the Chinese culture in his approach to governing the state.
This concept builds on the CPC's first integration theoretical synthesis, integrating the basic tenets of Marxism with China's specific realities.
Right, actually, the fine traditional Chinese culture, as President Xi puts it, is the root of the party's theoretical innovation.
Let's see what our contributors have to say about the root.
The innovative thinking that President Xi has catalyzed brings together both the visions. We have this harmonization between traditional Chinese wisdom and socialism in this bigger vision.
He understands the value of traditional Chinese culture, and he understands how traditional Chinese culture is fundamental to Chinese civilization. So Mr. Xi understands that we must nourish and replenish and know how to take care of those roots in order that there can be broader benefits for both the nation and for the wider world. So I think this feeds into his concept of working to build a community of shared future for mankind. It begins with nurturing and cultivating those roots.
We always say that a huge tree always have to have solid roots, and there the roots of China for sure is their wisdom, is their previous culture and the culture that is transforming to go into the future. So to me, it's very smart actually to be able to bring people together through culture.
Traditional culture is your link to the past. So if I don't go back and look at my past and see, where did these values come from? How did I get them? Why do I think the way I think? Then you will never really not only understand yourself.
The ceiling decoration draws inspiration from an ancient celestial chart. The design implies that the 5,000 years of Chinese civilization is as vast and brilliant as the starry sky.
China's fine traditional culture is comprised of many important elements, as President Xi noted, which have formed the prominent features of Chinese civilization. So which part of the Chinese culture do you appreciate the most?
For me personally, it's China's 4-character idiomatic expressions. They're often derived from ancient stories, but they're also applicable to modern life.
Yes, like President Xi himself often uses a lot of the idiomatic expressions in his speeches, like 和而不同,同舟共济, just to name a few.
And as a Chinese language learner, they're a huge part of what makes the language so much fun to learn. Now we go to our contributors to find out their favorite part.
Now, some of the elements that have developed are largely from Confucianism and have to do with rectitude of people, has to do with being a gentleman, a real persons, has to do with morality of treating other people the way you want to be treated yourself. It certainly puts the family into the highest level of importance. It's your immediate family, it's your broader family by blood, then it's your community, and largely then goes up to the state. And it has a very harmonious relationship between the state and the people.
I think we can refer back to the 5 main values in traditional Chinese culture. The first 3 come directly from Confucius. As for benevolence, I think we can see that as being a value which permeates Mr. Xi's attitude towards governance. The idea that everybody in this country, as a Chinese citizen, is entitled in the very least to a moderate level of prosperity, that it's not just that they're living at the subsistence level as they did in the distant past, but actually they are entitled to their own Chinese dream. They are allowed aspirations and a sense in which their lives can move forward and advance.
The concept of the I Ching, like being able to adapt to continuous changes, and the concept of yin yang, like in Kung Fu we use it all the time, because yin yang at the same time bring balance, and there has to be this balance between the rich and the poor, and that I believe that what makes this nation grow so fast in the last 40 years, like this ability to bring so many people out of poverty, and this trying to find this balance, I believe that is the greatest source of power that China has.
These exhibits are classic publications of Marxism, localization and modernization.
Despite their different cultural roots, President Xi said Marxism and China's fine traditional culture are highly consistent with each other.
Our contributors offer their insights.
I don't think that Karl Marx was writing with any great knowledge of traditional Chinese values or culture, but certainly in the present day, the Chinese government is working with a great knowledge of the framework that he laid down. And what they have in common is a concern for the basic decency of man, for equality, and for lifting up those who are otherwise downtrodden or oppressed. So there is a democratic spirit in both of them.
The innovative thinking that President Xi brings together the visions of socialism as it was originally founded by Marx and Engels, and then others to a lesser importance, and as that has been synthesized in China through reform and opening up and various understandings of the socialist market economy, etc., with ideas from traditional Chinese culture to give a kind of a rich mixture between the two.
Most people, or most foreigners maybe, or most people that are not familiar with China, have the notion that China is monolithic and it's always, separated and different from all the other. No, it's always been very multicultural, very, very multi-ethnic, with all kinds of religious influence and everything, all brought through the Silk Road and everything. It's always borrowed from other cultures and made it its own.
There is no escaping the fact that understanding China today necessitates an understanding of the CPC. This in turn requires understanding the cultural and civilizational soil in which the party grew.
The second integration is another effort to emancipate our minds. This makes it possible to make full use of the invaluable resources of China's fine traditional culture in a broader cultural context. This is key to exploring the theoretical and institutional innovation for the future.
Our contributors discuss how President Xi has nourished the soil and taken care of the branches, for example, foreign relations and environmental protection.
Let's look at the concept harmony without uniformity. This idea has its roots in yin-yang thought, which seeks to understand the unity of opposites and how we can seek harmony through this understanding, combined with Confucian principles of doing things well, particularly in governance, in order to establish a Shaokong society on the way to Datong. In other words, trying to establish a moderately prosperous or moderately well-off society on the way to great harmony. On the one hand, this kind of thinking promotes Xi Jinping's universal proposition of a shared future for mankind. On the other hand, it rejects the zero-sum logic underpinning Western universalism. Indeed, these remain substantially the key differences between Chinese and Western approaches. China promotes the unity of opposites, peaceful coexistence of differences, while the West contends that contradictions are illogical and must be negated.
If we go back to the Great Learning, you have the 8 steps, and the last 3 of those steps, there's regulate one's family, govern well one state and bring peace to the world. So we can also relate this back to the doctrine of the mean, which Mr. Xi is very fond of quoting. You know, all living things may grow side by side without harming one another, and different roads run in parallel without interfering. Having a peaceful world is of benefit to China as it is to everybody else.
Tao Te Ching is you get this sense of harmony between people and nature. And President Xi has been a great espouser of the environment. When we look at the 5 major development concepts, which President Xi put forth early on, I think 2015 in his leadership, and became the new development concept, the third of which was green. And that's the first time in Chinese history where the environment was lifted to the highest standards of economic development. And so this also is a reflection of traditional Chinese culture.
I live only a few kilometers from the Qingling Mountains. If I step out of my office, I can look over the balcony, and on a clear day I can see the most magnificent views. You know, I can see the views which the poets of the Tang Dynasty really cherished, and you know, the emperors and the court would come down from Chang'an to look at these same views, which haven't changed too much. But I think Mr. Xi understands the value of the environment. He's used very often the slogan, lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. And I think we can interpret that to mean that our preservation of nature, our protection of ecology can have an economic side as well.
There's a lot on people's minds, and there's a lot on the government, those in government. There's a lot on their plate and a lot in their minds. Every country is like that. So you're thinking of budgets, you're thinking of society's needs, you're thinking of energy needs, you're thinking of sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. What's interesting to me is how those things operate in a background of culture. So in a culture where those are part of your historical background, then the way you frame those ideas and the ways you approach the solutions have to do with what you grew up with and what your culture has taught you to value. Those cultural backgrounding is what they take to the table. And I think there's where the solutions take on a sort of a Chinese characteristic, because that's the culture they grew up in.
President Xi has said it's imperative to have greater confidence in China's culture. What's remarkable about China's culture is you can gain wisdom and find inspiration in its profound values.
President Xi noted that Chinese civilization is built upon 5 core characteristics: consistency, innovation, uniformity, inclusiveness, a peaceful nature. We continue to see Chinese people take pride in their own cultural heritage, and we could use the fine traditional culture to build a better future. See you next time.
Goodbye.